Today I want to talk about the key role that routine plays in my recovery and in preventing relapse and a movement toward dysfunction in my recovery and sobriety. So looking at a couple of things from the book Staying Sober by Gorski and Miller first, they talk about the history of relapse in terms of the way it's been thought of, and they mention that in early AA times back in the 30s, it was thought of as a return to alcohol use. So if you used other sedative drugs in place of alcohol, that was okay as long as you weren't drinking. As you can imagine, that didn't work out well for the people using the sedatives. They got addicted to the sedatives, and so the definition changed to use of any sedatives is a relapse. And then people started using other drugs like coke or pot or other things like that led to even more problems. And so they changed again to any return to use of mind-altering chemicals is a relapse. And so what Gorski and Miller talk about is that relapse is actually a process. It's not just about using alcohol and drugs. It's a process that begins before the return to addictive drug use. So what they say is the process of relapse includes becoming dysfunctional in sobriety. The dysfunction may involve physical, psychological, or social health. This does not mean that addictive use is not relapse. It means that the process of relapse is occurring before addictive use begins. So very important for us to realize that the process of relapse is something that starts before we pick up a bottle or before we pick up a joint or whatever our drug of choice was. The process of relapse is something that starts with dysfunction in sobriety. And one of the things this made me think of was the importance of routine in my own sobriety and how routine is a key part of the recovery program that I work, because the only way for me to ensure that I don't start returning to that dysfunctional way of living that I know I am capable, very capable of doing, is to have a routine built around recovery. So what does that look like? For me, the routine starts very early in the morning. I'll be honest that the first thing I do in the morning is grab a cup of coffee. Now, probably I should look at adjusting that habit. I should look at doing something like going for a walk or stretching that would get my blood flowing a little bit and get more physical activity into my early morning routine. So I'm looking at that. But right now, today, being honest with you, coffee's the first thing on my agenda. Once I get my coffee, I come up here and I do my recovery-based reading and I do this video. It's very important for me. I've been doing this kind of thing for almost a year now, every day, without fail, every single day for almost a year. Holidays, birthday, whatever, days I felt bad, days I felt great. Every day I've sat first thing in the morning and looked at some recovery-based reading and then done some kind of commentary on it. And the reason is that there's multiple reasons. One, it helps me get my brain in a recovery frame so that the rest of my day is built around this. I start with a recovery-based mindset, and that makes it a lot more difficult to even really consider alcohol or drugs as a viable solution to any of my problems. It's kind of difficult to imagine going to bed drunk when the first thing I do every single morning is do a recovery-based video. It's kind of hard to imagine getting high during the day when just a few hours ago I was talking about how great it is to be sober. So that is a preventative thing for me. It helps me keep in the recovery mindset. It also, I do view it as a service in some ways, because because my hope is that these videos are helpful in some way to other people. And so it's a good way for me to get outside of myself a little bit and think about what kinds of things am I reading that are helpful, that might be helpful for other people, and try to get them out there. And so that's why this part of the routine is important. The next part, for obvious reasons, is important. As soon as I'm done posting a video, I pray and meditate. I pray to the God of my understanding. I meditate using usually mindfulness techniques where I'm focused on my breathing, focused on my body, focused on the sounds of the world around me. Sometimes if things are very stressful, I might do some thoughts about being in a pleasant place, being in a calm situation. But prayer and meditation are the next important thing. And then throughout the day, I've got reminders set on my phone to remind me to do different things. You know, I've got one that reminds me that when I'm struggling in the day, that's a sign. Look for somebody to help out. Look for somebody who needs some help. Get outside of my brain. I've got another reminder set up around lunchtime to say, take a break, take some time to be with God. And that's the God of my understanding, the God of your understanding. If you don't have God in your life and you're pursuing another path, just take some time to be calm. Do a little mindfulness meditation, something like that. But take some time out, especially in days where you're working. It's easy to get caught up in everything, and even just 5 minutes of peace, quiet, focus on your breathing, that kind of thing can make a huge difference. And then I do try to get to meetings. I don't go to meetings every day, but I try to get to at least 3 meetings a week, if not 4. 4 is my ideal, but it's usually difficult to do that at this point for me, so I usually go with at least try to get to 3 meetings a week. And then every evening, at the end of the evening, I do a inventory where I look back on the day. I have an app on my phone called the 10th Step, where it asks a series of questions about what I did during the day that help me reflect back on, is there anything that I did in terms of forming resentments or acting out of fear or being unkind to people that I need to think about? Do I owe an apology that I need to get on? And that kind of self-reflection is something that was totally absent from my life for years and years and years, and I find is extremely valuable now, because at the end of the day, you often have a different perspective of what happened than you could have had when you were actually experiencing it. So when I'm in the middle of a stressful day at work, something happens, I get upset with somebody, it's often hard for me to see all the different sides of that story until later that evening when I'm sitting quietly and reflecting on it. And the last thing that I do as part of my recovery routine is when I'm laying in bed at night, about to go to sleep, I pray. And a lot of times I fall asleep praying. And I find that a very apt way to end the day. It really is a nice thing for me to do to end the day talking with God. And again, that's a God of my understanding. It's a personal relationship, and having this routine built around things like this helps me to further that relationship. So all these things together build a routine that forms the foundation of my spiritual recovery. And that is what keeps me from going down a dysfunctional path. And I am convinced that as soon as some of these things start to fall to the wayside, that's where I will go. And I might be able to keep my sobriety for a while without these things, but not forever. I am a firm believer that what I am establishing now the routine that I'm doing right now, this is a lifetime thing. This is what I am going to do for the rest of my life. And that is fine with me. It might change, it might adjust, it really should. I really should get that exercise first thing in the morning. I really should do that. So that's what I'm working on. I'm working on changing that piece right now. But the rest of it, this is the stuff that really is going to be the bedrock of spiritual growth and spiritual peace as I move forward. And that's why I think for especially addicts in early recovery, that routine is so critical. So find your routine. Talk to other people. See what their routine is. Steal smart, as people that I work with would say. Take ideas from other people that make sense in your life. You're going to find your own routine and make it your own. And that's part of the adventure of recovery, because it really is an adventure. It's finding a new way to live, and there's a lot of joy and fun in doing that. So that's it for today. Tomorrow we'll get into a little bit about substitute addictions, which I know a lot about because of my story. So I'll probably tell a little bit about my story tomorrow. In the meantime, hope you all have a great day, and I'll see you back here tomorrow morning.